Haven't I said I've reached my limit? I desperately appealed to my wife, Mary, but she just looked at me coldly and retorted.
If you've got a problem, why don't you leave?
Fine. I'll leave this house. When I left the house, I had divorce papers in my hand. I'm gonna file this right now. After quickly submitting the divorce papers I received from my wife, what fate awaited her and her mother? My name is John White. I'm turning 41 this year. My wife Mary and I have been married for 7 years. We both work and have different jobs. I was raised by my maternal grandparents after my parents died in a car accident when I was little. My grandfather, who loved to travel, took me to various places as I was lonely without my parents. Influenced by my grandfather, traveling became my hobby. I blog about my solo travels and earn income as a freelancer. It was on one of these trips that I met Mary. We happened to meet at a bar, where she was drinking with a group of people. I found myself inadvertently following Mary with my eyes because she was at the center of everyone's attention and cared for me. Mary, who worked at a brokerage firm as a hardworking salesperson, seemed so bright to my eyes. We exchanged contact information, and after a strong pursuit, we started dating and eventually got married. Even after marriage, I continued writing blog articles from home, while Mary worked as a company employee. One day, when I was chilling with a cup of coffee, Mary said,
John, I'm off to work. Can you do the laundry and make dinner tonight too?
Okay. Hey, can you pick up a tomato can for tonight's meat pasta? After I asked, Mary became frowned in annoyance.
I'm working outside, John. Because you're at home, you could do that much, right?
Sorry, I might not have time to go out today, I'm swamped with work. At that moment, the living room door opened.
John, I've been listening. Why are you asking Mary to run errands?
It was my mother-in-law, Susan, who lives nearby. Oh, Susan. What brings you here all of a sudden? As I asked in a trembling voice, she glared at me. Then Mary casually dropped a bombshell.
Oh, by the way, I gave her a key to this house.
What? Why would you do that without asking me? Before I could confront Mary, Susan stared me down.
Is there a problem? John, you're pushing house chores on your working wife. You should be doing everything since you're home.
That's right, Mom. John is awful, isn't he?
Mary joined in with a smirk.
Really, he comfortably lives at home, not earning much, and still having the nerve to be so demanding.
Being criticized like this, all I could do was bite my lip in silence. All right. I'll go.
Just listen quietly to what you're told, since you're being supported by your wife.
She said with satisfaction. Turning away from her, I retreated to my room. My biggest concern was Susan. After being widowed, she lived alone nearby, and seemed to be proud of Mary, who was graduated from a prestigious university, and still dotes on her. Since the beginning of our marriage, she's disliked my work-from-home lifestyle, always making snide remarks. Mary has never stood up for me during these attacks. I realized after marriage that Mary, raised with praise by her mother, was prideful and vain. They still depend on each other, and if I ever complain about her, Mary gets upset right away. I dreaded the thought of her frequently coming over. Just thinking about it made me feel depressed. Sure enough, she started dropping by often. She criticized every household chore I did and spent entire days at our home chatting with Mary on her days off. This life drained me completely. It was Susan's birthday, and I was on my way to her house. It was a duty I had to fulfill, despite my heavy steps. Mary, having work, left the house and we planned to meet there, so I headed alone to Susan's home. Happy birthday, Susan. I arrived first and took out a beautifully wrapped box from a paper bag. This is a gift for you. It's a handmade bag I bought at a shop I visited for an interview. Before I could finish, she got aloud.
What's this? Trying to go cheap, huh? It's probably some freebie you got, isn't it?
No, that's not it. I hurriedly denied, but she wasn't listening.
I don't need such a cheap bag. Really, you're so thoughtless.
I thought you'd like it, so I prepared it, but... She began to berate me with a sharp look.
Enough already. I don't like how you use your job as an excuse to travel and inconvenience Mary.
That's not fair. I take pride in my work. I retorted, but she continued to look down on me.
Pride in your little side hustle. That's laughable. You're living off Mary. Return this useless thing and bring me gift cards instead.
All right. I put the present back in the bag and left for the department store. I'd like $200 in gift cards, please. After purchasing and wrapping the gift cards, I returned to my in-laws' house, feeling heavy. I'm back, Susan. As I spoke, Mary, who had arrived in the meantime, popped up.
John, it's Mom's celebration today. I ordered some fancy takeout.
The dining table was crowded with dishes from a famous restaurant. But I was told to cook, so I bought ingredients. Susan interrupted.
What are you talking about? This is obviously better than your cooking. Thanks for this, Mary.
I could only watch them with a dissatisfied look. Eventually, I reluctantly sat down, and we started eating. Mary and Susan were chatting happily, but I felt left out. Near the end of the meal, Mary suddenly said,
Hey, John, shouldn't we consider moving?
Moving?
There's a new high-rise nearby. Living somewhere with a great view and atmosphere would really motivate me at work.
Oh, a high-rise. How nice.
Susan was obviously thrilled, so I quickly said, Isn't our current house good enough? But Mary looked visibly annoyed.
We have enough in our budget, so why not?
Susan glared at me, pressuring me.
Exactly. A man should just quietly listen to his wife.
I felt small and could only agree, okay. Indeed, it's not a bad idea if moving would improve my work situation. And if we don't give Susan a key, situations might be better than now. I convinced myself and agreed to the move. While proceeding with the arrangements, I firmly told Mary, I need you to promise me something. Once we move, don't give the key to Susan.
Why? It's no big deal.
I've reached my limit with her meddling. If you can't promise that, we can't move. Mary seemed thoughtful, then put her hand on my shoulder.
Okay, if you say so, I can't help it. I won't give her the key.
Thanks for understanding. Mary seemed really excited about the high rise. With her promise not to give Susan a key, I felt relieved and continued with the moving preparations. Months later, we moved into the high rise. The location was fantastic, with a great view and a luxurious interior. Living there with Mary, I was finally enjoying a fulfilling life, but the issue with Susan was still looming.
Hey, can I invite my mom over today?
What, you just invited her yesterday? She started wanting to invite her mother over almost every day. As a result, my stress only increased, leading to more frequent arguments. Please, stop inviting Susan every day.
Why not? You said not to give her a key, so I'm asking for permission.
That's not the point. The day after our argument, I had to leave for an overnight business trip for an article meeting. On the day of the trip, Mary didn't say much as I left. I headed to my destination, and busily finished my work. Despite the busy schedule, I managed to finish everything and bought some souvenirs on my way home. I realized something was off the moment I opened the door. There was a vase-like ornament that wasn't there before. It was identical to one from my in-laws' entryway. A bad feeling crept over me as I went to the living room, only to find it filled with cardboard boxes. What? What's this? Then, smirking, Susan emerged from behind the boxes.
Finally back, huh? You told Mary not to give me a key, didn't you? Well, I won't be locked out that easily.
Panicking, I confronted her. Susan, what's all this stuff?
What do you mean? I'm moving in. It doesn't matter if I have a key if I live here, right?
But what about your previous house?
I've already canceled that lease.
Proudly, she made me dizzy with her words. Then, I noticed a piece of paper on the table. What? Ignoring me, Mary appeared in the living room, confused upon seeing me.
Oh, John, you're back?
Mary, what is this? I didn't agree to this. Mary, annoyed, said, scratching her head.
What's the big deal? We have extra rooms.
I can't live with her. I told you I've reached my limit. Even though I made an impassioned plea to her, she looked at me with such cold eyes and set it off.
If you have a problem, why don't you leave?
Saying that, she held out a completed divorce papers towards me. Are you serious?
Dead serious. Remember, when you defy me, we're getting a divorce. Now, sign it.
She forcefully handed me the divorce papers.
That's right. Mary and I will live here. So leave, will you?
Mary and Susan say so with a look that says it's obvious. Despite everything I'd endured, this betrayal was unbelievable. In the end, they asked me to leave. I don't need a family like this anymore. Biting back tears in my vexation, I calmly stated, "Fine. I'll leave this room."
Good, get your stuff and go. I can't wait to see how you manage your life from now.
As I packed, Susan's laughter echoed. Mary avoided looking at me, but I had to say, "Mary, are you sure about this?" She looked at me, smirking, and said,
You'll probably come back soon. Just cool off.
I left the high-rise while Susan was grinning at me. I had divorce papers in my hand. All right, I'll file this immediately. Deciding to part ways with my wife and mother-in-law, I moved on. A month later, relaxing in my new condo, the intercom rang incessantly. Who is it?
It's me. Open up now.
It was red-faced Susan and Mary on the screen. Initially wanting to ignore them, I let them in to avoid disturbing the neighbors. What do you want? When I said that with a troubled look, Susan snapped.
What do you mean by leaving that high rise?
It's obvious. It's already been sold. Her shock was evident as I told her the truth.
Sold it. That condo was Mary's property, wasn't it? There's no way you could sell it.
Mary's property? What are you talking about? I bought that high-rise myself.
What?
Susan looked at me, who has a calm expression, and then looked at Mary, who stood there pale-faced and motionless.
What's that all about?
I sighed deeply, looking straight at Mary. Mary, didn't you tell her? She remained silent, avoiding eye contact. I turned to Susan, who is still confused. You called me a bottom-feeding freeloader, but I'm actually the founder of a travel blog and occasionally appear in magazines and on TV.
Magazines? TV?
She gaped at me, astonished. I continued calmly. So, I have some savings. By the way, the gift you rejected because it was cheap cost over $1,000.
$1,000?
Well, I returned it as you wished. And about the food delivery on your birthday, Mary paid for it with my credit card. Her face went from shock to anger, turning quickly to Mary.
Mary, then you can just buy back the high rise from him. You're a top salesperson with a salary of over $100,000, right? You must have some savings.
She remained silent. Trying to hold back my laughter, I told Susan. Mary doesn't have any savings.
What?
Even though Susan again had a surprised look and Mary just stood there, I continued evenly. She's been continuously losing money on stocks. She's almost out of savings. Isn't that right, Mary?
No, Mary, that's a lie, right?
She grabbed Mary's arm, shaking her, and Mary collapsed to the floor as if her legs gave out.
I thought moving to the high-rise would motivate me and lead to success at work. But
what? As I questioned her while staring at her, she continued mumbling evasively.
I failed again. Instead of buying it back, I can barely afford to live with Mom.
What?
She panicked. Ignoring her, I crossed my arms and said, I knew it. Mary had no sense in trading stocks. I wanted to support her as her husband, but then Mary crawled in front of me and suddenly strongly begged me.
John, I'm so sorry. Please, let's start over.
Mary, what are you saying to this man?
Susan tried to pull her up, but Mary shouted back.
But Mom, we can't survive without it.
She kept begging me. I spoke softly. Mary, look at me. Her eyes filled with hope as she raised her head. I continued gently. You never helped with household chores, saying it was my duty for my work-from-home husband.
I'm really sorry about that.
She apologized with a paled face. I ignored her apology and went on. You belittled me, saying I should leave, and now this? You takes too much for granted, do you?
I wanted to.
We're already divorced. I don't want anything more to do with you. Let's go our separate ways.
John.
As I firmly spoke, she tried to cling to me, but I silently brushed her hand away. Susan, having witnessed everything, cried out in anguish.
Wait a minute. What about the high rise and our luxurious life?
That's obviously impossible now. I said with a tone of disbelief. She shrieked hysterically.
What are we supposed to do now?
How about living happily with your beloved daughter? I suggested. She just gaped, speechless. I helped the dejected Mary stand up and ushered them out. The noisy commotion from Susan lingered at the entrance for a while, but it seemed to quiet down when the building manager arrived. Half a year later, I was on a new journey, traveling abroad. The unique freedom of being overseas felt incredibly refreshing. Recently, I received a message. It was from Mary, whom I had parted ways with that day. Apparently, after being evicted from the high-rise, Mary and her mother had moved into a dilapidated house that almost collapses. To pay off her debts from stock trading, Mary worked day and night, and her mother, who had never worked before, took a part-time job in a factory to make ends meet. In her message, Mary expressed her gratitude, acknowledging the hardship of earning money and the lessons she learned. I felt a small knot in my heart unraveled. Just a few days ago, after a long time back home, I agreed to go out for a drink with Mary upon her invitation.
I might have taken out my frustrations on you, doing what you love for a living. I'm really sorry.
She said, apologizing again. That day, I felt like I truly heard Mary's honest feelings for the first time. It's okay. Thanks to that, I'm very happy now. She smiled wistfully.
Going abroad again?
Yeah. I'm off again next week. As we parted, she extended her hand.
I'll live as hard as you, not to be outdone.
Sure. I'm rooting for you. We shook hands firmly. Walking home, I thought about cherishing my work and living my life positively from now on. My name is Tyler. I met my wife, Catherine, through a friend's introduction. She was bright, sociable, and we quickly hit it off even though we were meeting for the first time. After going out for a few meals, I developed feelings for Catherine, and we started dating. About 2 years into our relationship, we both started thinking about marriage, began living together, and got married the following year. We thought of the wedding as a once-in-a-lifetime event, so we went all out and had a grand celebration. We had our mutual friends perform some entertainment, making it a memorable ceremony. Our life together was quite happy. Although we both worked, Catherine's job didn't involve much overtime, so she always came home first, preparing dinner and waiting for me.
Welcome home, Tyler. Today we have steaks.
Knowing my love for meat, Catherine would make meat dishes 3 times a week while considering nutritional balance. Her homemade dishes were always delicious, and I couldn't help but feel incredibly lucky to have such a wonderful wife. Well, at least until that time. It was a day when 3 years had passed since our marriage. Lately, I had started to feel that Catherine's behavior was changing. She no longer waited for me to come home and make dinner, and instead, it seemed like she was going out after work, often not being home when I returned. Before, even if I had to work late, there would be homemade dishes on the table, but now it was mostly frozen food and supermarket deli items, making me feel somewhat lonely. However, both Catherine and I were busy with work, and during a period when I was also swamped, it became challenging to find time for just the two of us. While I was working late, I was thinking only things that suit myself, as if Catherine would want her own time. So, I didn't even make an effort to understand her feelings. The days like that continued for about 2 months, and I finally thought it couldn't go on like this. Since my work had settled down a bit, I decided to take a day off and suggested going to a beach with Catherine. When I came home, Catherine was lying on the sofa, reading a fashion magazine. I hadn't heard the words, "Welcome home," recently. "Catherine, I took a day off for the week after next. How about going to a beach and taking it easy?" To my words, Catherine responded without taking her eyes off the magazine.
No, I'm tired, so I'll pass.
I had imagined her delighted face, and not understanding the meaning of her words, my brain temporarily stopped working. Actually, I had been researching accommodations and local gourmet options, planning to show a travel plan to her.
I've been busy lately, and I haven't been able to pay much attention to you, right? You must have felt lonely without me, and I thought it would be nice for us to go to the beach together and spend time like we used to.
I was sure Catherine didn't view our current situation positively either. I deliberately made time for the two of us, hoping to rebuild the good relationship we had before. However, Catherine's response remained unchanged.
I'm fine just the way things are now. Even without you, I have things to do. You don't need to worry about it.
In the end, Catherine's gaze remained fixed on the magazine. No matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't understand why Catherine was taking this attitude, and that night, I went to sleep with a feeling of unease. I didn't sleep well in the end, and the next morning, I left the house with an awkward atmosphere with Catherine. However, since work wasn't going well, I decided to consult with a colleague about what happened yesterday during lunch break.
Hey, can you listen to me for a moment? It's not like I had a big fight with my wife yesterday, but something like this happened.
Could it be that she's cheating on you? I mean, there's no clear reason for her to suddenly act cold, right? I can't think of any other reason for her to do that.
Cheating.
Those 2 words echoed heavily in my head. Although it shouldn't be possible for Catherine to do such a thing, once it was suggested by a third party, suspicions continued to grow, and I finally fell ill. I couldn't focus on work that day and decided to leave early. When I got home, I headed straight to the bedroom, didn't even change into my casual clothes, took off my suit jacket, and fell down on the bed. There was still some time until Catherine came home. I decided to sleep until then. I thought it might help ease my uneasy feelings if I closed my eyes in the cool and dimly lit room. Last night, I was sleep deprived, so as I lay down, I quickly became drowsy and halfway went into a dream. That's when I heard the sound of the front door closing, a woman's laughter, and footsteps that seemed like multiple people entering the house. I woke up there and paid attention to the noises. The voices were undoubtedly Catherine's. At first, I thought Catherine came back home. However, I heard an unfamiliar male voice, and my suspicions of infidelity increased. I realized the footsteps were coming toward my bedroom, and my heart rate increased rapidly.
Oh honey, that's so sweet.
While saying that, Catherine opened the bedroom door. Catherine, who didn't expect me to be there, briefly looked surprised when our eyes met. But in the next moment, she spoke in a mocking tone.
Oh, Tyler, what are you doing here?
I felt unwell, so I left work early and was sleeping. More importantly, weren't you supposed to be at work?
I took a day off and was hanging out today.
Without showing any concern for my condition, she glanced at the tall man standing behind her, with her arm around and said it. Hanging out. I wanted to strongly tell the man not to touch my wife so affectionately, but nausea welled up again, accompanied by a headache, and I could only manage to say that weakly.
You already figured it out, right? I'm cheating with this guy. Just so you know, it's all your fault. Everything's on you. So don't expect any apologies.
With crossed arms and a triumphant stance, Catherine said this to me, who was slumped in exhaustion. I was just bewildered by how easily she admitted to cheating.
Stop making that face now. You ignored me so much. Jack treats me like a woman, unlike you, and being together heals my heart. He's the company president, so he's sensitive to current trends, always exciting and fun to be with.
I recognized the face of the man Catherine was praising. And with Catherine's previous remarks, it clicked. The company president. Could it be from XYZ company? Indeed, the man standing there was the president of a business partner company I worked with. He had started his own business in his 20s and quickly became famous in the industry. I had visited the company for business, exchanged business cards, we had a professional relationship. Why? I questioned Catherine.
Why? I already told you the reason earlier. I don't mind divorcing like this.
Upon hearing the word divorce, I desperately felt the need to stop Catherine. However, she tried to leave the room with Jack.
Hey, is this okay, ending the breakup talk so easily?
Jack asked, but Catherine replied.
It doesn't matter anymore.
And tried to pull Jack away.
Well, that's how it is. Don't worry, I'll make sure Catherine is happy.
Jack gave me a refreshing smile, then left the room with Catherine. I divorced shortly after, received compensation, but mentally, I suffered and had to take a leave of absence from work for a while. The reason for Catherine's affair was, as I suspected, because I prioritized work and couldn't make time for her. Catherine started spending time alone in bars and met Jack there. Because Catherine has a personality that can easily get to know someone who meets for the first time, it didn't take long to shorten the distance with Jack. During my leave of absence, a colleague I had consulted about the affair contacted me. Jack's company, which was our business partner, had withdrawn from New York due to headquarters relocation. With this, the possibility of dealing with Jack's company upon my return to work disappeared, and I felt a bit relieved. Several years passed since those hellish days, and I somehow managed to recover mentally. I had the fortune of meeting a wonderful woman, and I got remarried. I changed jobs and relocated to a more rural area, which, unlike the city, was rich in nature and offered a comfortable living. Our married life was good, and we enjoyed a peaceful existence. However, once again, I found myself entangled in an unexpected event. On a day off, while I was out alone, I heard someone calling my name and was stopped by a police officer. Although I hadn't done anything wrong, a sense of foreboding led me to decide to go to the police station. Upon arriving at the police station and being led into a room, to my surprise, there was my ex-wife, Catherine, waiting for me. Upon seeing my face, Catherine became excited and started shouting.
There. This person. Officer, this is the stalker. He's been following me. Disgusting.
What? Stalker? What are you talking about?
Ridiculous. Just when I thought we'd parted ways, now you're stalking me. This harassment has gone too far.
Unable to grasp what Catherine was saying in the situation at hand, I asked for an explanation. However, Catherine continued to blame me, and I couldn't see the main point of the conversation. Then, a police officer brought in a man. It was Jack.
Hey, I heard from Catherine, but you seem quite obsessive. It's been years since the divorce, and you still have lingering feelings.
Despite not wanting to be lectured by the person who was the cause of the divorce, I asked the police officer, who had brought Jack, to explain the situation. It turned out that Catherine had been reporting to the police that she was being stalked by someone who resembled me. The police investigated and found out that I had recently moved to this town, so they came to confirm the facts. I understand the situation. But, Catherine, I had no idea you guys were living in this town.
Okay, no kidding, who believes the excuses of a criminal?
As Catherine spoke dismissively, anger welled up in me, but the police officer reprimanded me.
Is there anyone who can vouch for your innocence?
Upon the officer's request, I decided to bring in a certain person. A few minutes later, the person I called arrived. When Jack saw their face, he exclaimed in shock.
You, Ellie.
Big brother, it's been a while.
Yes, I had remarried Jack's sister, Ellie. Jack and Catherine seemed to be in a panic, not understanding what was happening. Jack's affair with Catherine had been exposed to their parents, and so they cut ties with Jack. Jack's parents, upon learning that someone had been hurt because of their son, took care of me. Initially, I didn't want to face the family of the person who was the cause of the affair, but as I got to know them, I felt my heart gradually calming. After several interactions, Ellie, Jack's sister, and I were drawn to each other and ended up getting married.
What the hell? I haven't heard anything about this.
Jack shouted angrily at us, but Ellie, being his sister, retorted confidently.
Oh, please. Do we have an obligation to inform someone who no longer considers us family? Besides, during the time Catherine claimed you were being stalked, my husband and I were having dinner at the restaurant in Hilton Hotel. Our names should be on the reservation list, and we even had wine, so you could check with the sommelier if you don't believe us.
I was finally declared innocent. Grateful to Ellie, we left the police station. Jack and Catherine came chasing us and grabbed Ellie's shoulder.
Wait a minute, did you really marry that guy? He couldn't survive in the city and ended up in the countryside. You'll regret marrying such a loser.
That's true. When I was married to him, he ignored me so much.
These two seemed determined to ruin our happiness. When Ellie freed her shoulder from Catherine's grip, a luxury car pulled up in front of the police station. Seeing the person who got out of the car, Jack exclaimed.
"Oh, Dad."
Jack's father, glaring at his surprised son, spoke.
You have no right to call me Dad. Rather than that, what disrespectful thing did you do to my daughter and son-in-law?
Well, I mean, can't be helped. But is this okay? Ellie marrying this loser?
Talking back to the heir of my company, if anyone has fallen, it's probably you. Your success in business was just luck. Acting all high and mighty, not even understanding how to manage. Destroying someone else's family on top of that. You have no right to speak ill of Tyler.
Yes, the reason I moved to this town was to study as the successor to Ellie's father's business, and I had changed jobs to work for a subsidiary company in this town. Jack, looking dejected, and Catherine, who was scolded by Jack's father, fell silent. Then Ellie delivered the final blow.
Hey, what do you mean? You kept saying you could take over the company, right? I mean, Jack's company was doing well, isn't it? If you work hard and expand the business.
What? Were you paying no attention? This guy's company is on the verge of bankruptcy. Plus, with his extravagant spending habits, he's probably drowning in debt, don't you think?
That's...
Jack fell silent, struck by his father's accurate remark. Then Ellie delivered a final blow, almost like a finishing move.
Big brother, you told Tyler's ex-wife that you would definitely make her happy, but it seems you're just good at talking. And to believe that, how lacking in judgment can you be?
And so, the suspicion of stalking against my ex-wife was successfully cleared. Later, Jack's company went bankrupt, and around the same time, Catherine left Jack. On the other hand, I was freed from the curse of my ex-wife and Jack. I continue to enjoy happy days with Ellie. Please listen to my story about stopping my wife's affair. I'm John Smith, 31, an office worker, making about $60,000 a year. My wife, 29, an office worker, making about $45,000 a year. The other man, 30, an office worker, married with kids. My wife and I were senior and junior members of a sport team in college. I got into high school and college on an athletic scholarship. My wife got in via a regular admission, so she was in the same team as me, but we hardly interacted. I think we first really talked at an alumni gathering after graduation. That's when I fell for her at first sight and pursued her aggressively. We dated for about a year before getting married. I was 26, and she was 24 at the time. Afterward, I worked for a manufacturer, and she worked in a trading company's general affairs department, and we got along pretty well. Then, this February, I returned from a week-long business trip. And something about my wife seemed off. She hardly ever played games or texted on her phone before, but now, she was constantly carrying her phone around, even taking it to the bathroom. During this time, her phone was buzzing with notifications. I must have looked suspicious because my wife started making excuses without me even asking.
I ran into an old classmate, and we've been catching up on WhatsApp.
I became full of suspicion. That was the moment I decided to check her phone. That night, I went to bed early and pretended to sleep, waiting for her to fall asleep. Around 3 a.m., once I was sure she was asleep, I looked for her phone charger, but the phone wasn't there. Looking around, I found the charger plugged in next to the bed. The cord was under her pillow. Bringing her phone into bed was something she had never done before. I waited for her to turn over, then carefully slid my hand under the pillow, and after some time, I managed to get her phone. Luckily, it wasn't locked. When I checked WhatsApp, the first thing I saw was a message saying, "I love you." I felt dizzy for a moment. Looking through the chat, it seemed the other man had come to town for a business trip 2 days ago, and they happened to meet. They exchanged contact information. Since I was away on a business trip, they had dinner together just once. The other man had tried to make a move, but he ran out of time. He had to go back home. The chat continued, and it seemed like I came back from my trip in the middle of their conversation on WhatsApp. The most shocking part was finding out that the other man was probably an ex-boyfriend, with messages like, "You were my first," and, "That's my most precious memory." I thought about confronting her right then and there, but if she said it was just a joke, I wouldn't know what to do. So I decided to set up her email to be forwarded to me and started monitoring WhatsApp. My wife isn't good with technology, and I knew she kept a list of her IDs and passwords in a notebook. I quietly took out the notebook from her bag and took a photo with my phone. Then, I set up WhatsApp on my work and home computers to start monitoring. They were chatting about meeting up during the day. My anger reached its peak, but after giving it some thought, I realized the other man's home was a plane ride away, so they couldn't easily meet. So, I decided to let it play out for a while, but then I found out he was planning to come here on a business trip again, saying things like, "I can come next month, so we can meet, and we'll have a passionate night then," with replies like, "I'm a little bit excited." That's when I decided I had to stop it. The next half month was torture. And then, I bought something on the internet. A week before the other man was supposed to come to town, my wife asked me,
A friend is visiting next week. Do you mind if I stay over?
I had a plan in mind, so I smiled.
Of course not. But there's something I want to talk about, so please come home early the night before you go.
She was like,
What's that about?
but I dodged the question and went to sleep. Their WhatsApp messages were still as lively as ever, but I just endured it and waited for the right moment. Then, the night before the sleepover arrived. The day to execute my plan.
How about we have a drink before we talk?
Knowing my wife loves alcohol despite her low tolerance, I made her a sweet but strong cocktail. During this, I played the part of the best husband.
Thank you for being with me up until today. Let's keep looking out for each other. I haven't said this properly before, but let me say it now. I love you.
I laid it on thick, appealing to my wife's conscience. She was half drunk and nearly asleep, tears welling up in her eyes, moved by my words. I thought, if she still decides to go to that guy tomorrow, I'll have to resort to my last option. Carrying her in bridal style, I took her to the bedroom. The next morning, she woke up saying,
I had too much fun drinking last night. I was so drunk, I barely remember anything.
She was all smiles. We spent the day together until the evening when she started getting ready in a hurry.
I need to get ready to go to my friend's place.
She took her time with her makeup, something different from usual, and didn't come out of the room for a long time.
Okay, I'm heading out. I'll be back tomorrow morning, but we'll try to return as early as possible.
She was about to leave, and that's when I stopped her.
Hold on, if you're going, take this with you.
I handed her divorce papers, a property division waiver, and a consent form for a $100,000 alimony payment.
What's this?
Next, I gave her the printouts of their WhatsApp conversations. Seeing that, my wife's face turned pale instantly.
Got anything to say?
Of course, she was speechless and trembling.
If you want to go, go ahead, but if you do, don't ever think you can come back to this house. What's it gonna be? Decide now, sign or leave.
I pressed on her, and she broke down crying.
I'm sorry, I won't go.
Then call that guy right now. I took her phone out of her bag and handed it to her. Remember, don't let on that you've been caught. Ask him to change the meeting place, tell him to come to the station here. Following my instructions, she nodded. Soon, a carefree reply came from the other guy. I'm here. Can't wait to see you. I had my wife reply, I'll be right there. I left my wife at home, taking her phone with me to the station by taxi. Wait for me at the taxi stand. Since I didn't know what the other man looked like, I sent that message. Then, a flashy suited guy, obviously sleazy, showed up at the taxi stand, his phone in hand.
Are you the guy who is seeing a cheating wife?
When I approached him, he gave me an annoyed look and replied.
Yeah, and who are you?
I'm her husband, got a problem with that?
The moment I said that, his face screamed trouble, and he dashed off somewhere. Even if he got away now, I could still corner him later, so I went back home. Don't think you've gotten away. I'll make sure you take responsibility. I left him a message on WhatsApp to that effect. After a while, it was read, and he replied, I haven't done anything yet. Seducing someone's wife and calling her out is a sin enough. I'll be sure to complain to your family and your employer. After I sent that, the replies stopped. When I got home and asked my wife for the details, it turned out the other man was indeed her high school ex-boyfriend.
We went to different colleges, so we drifted apart. But then, after 11 years, we reconnected and things escalated. Please, anything but divorce. My phone won't be locked anymore, so you can check it whenever you want.
She confessed with tears, but that wasn't something I could just accept at face value. I told her we'd need to report this to her parents. She'd have to tell her friends herself. I also said we'd report the other man to his family and employer, so she needed to give me his information right away. She handed over his business card. There were his cell number and email on the back. I told her I couldn't trust her right away, but her future actions would determine whether we'd divorce. It was like she was on probation. Then, I called her parents to tell them everything. Both of her parents came over immediately and scolded her. Her dad pleaded.
Please, anything but divorce.
Since the affair was only attempted, I was still deciding whether to divorce, but when I said her future behavior would determine our fate, her parents demanded and said.
You apologize too.
After sending her parents home, it was time to deal with the other man. Since it was Saturday, I waited until Monday to call the number on his business card to voice my complaints. Next, I found his parents' number through my wife's high school alumni directory and gave them a call. Likely speaking with his mother.
This is Synth, I'm sorry to call out of the blue, but your son has been causing trouble by seducing my wife. I've already made complaints to his employer, so I thought it best to inform you as well. I have evidence of their exchanges, should you wish to see it.
Initially, she thought it was a prank call, but she believed me once I mentioned my wife's name. She asked me,
Can I have your contact information?
So I gave her my cell number. That evening, the cheating partner's wife called me. She wanted to confirm if what I told her in-laws was true.
Unfortunately, it is, and I have evidence.
After expressing her apologies, I reassured her.
You have nothing to apologize for, it's your husband who's in the wrong. He ran away without apologizing, making things worse. Please ask him how he plans to take responsibility as an adult.
2 days later, the cheating partner and his parents flew in to apologize. He got off with a severe warning at work, but it seems he and his wife are getting a divorce. He had a history of having affairs, and this time his debt was discovered, leading his wife to finally give up on him. After their apology, his parents offered an envelope. It was the least they could do.
What's this?
I asked.
It's all the money we can spare right now.
I refused, suggesting they give it to his wife instead.
It's not about the money. I can't stand the thought of a married man treating another's wife like a toy. As an adult, he should take full responsibility for his actions.
Lastly, I told the cheater.
Don't make your parents clean up your mess at your age.
He seemed to listen solemnly, but whether it sank in, I couldn't tell. With the divorce settled, he's facing a tough road ahead with alimony and debt. There was no point in pursuing this further, so I let it go. My wife is currently staying with her parents, being educated by her father. I'm planning to bring her back home eventually. But not without making sure her father teaches her right so that there won't be a next time. I managed to prevent an affair this time because I acted on my suspicions early. Despite it being just an attempt, the other man faced significant consequences, but it was all brought on by himself. My wife accidentally left her phone at home. During her commuting time, I noticed it was receiving texts every 10 minutes. Worried it might be something urgent, I checked and saw messages starting with an emoji, "Good morning," then with a crying face, no reply, and with a sad face, "Hurry up." Turned out, they were from her boss. Along with some lovey-dovey selfies. I found a locked folder on her phone, managed to peek inside, and was shocked. My wife had gone to work wearing a garter belt, something I never knew about. She always leaves early for her 9 a.m. start. Claiming,
I'm busy in the mornings.
I thought she was just being diligent. Now, I'm not sure what to do. I have a business trip this afternoon. I'm really not looking forward to it now. I decided to stop by a detective agency I've used before. They once helped me track down someone involved in a hit and run. No word from my wife yet. I'll take her phone with me. But decided to take the day off and explain the situation at work. The trip was actually for a business golf outing, and I'm not that great at golf anyway. My boss, who's been through a divorce due to his wife's infidelity, sympathized with me. I broke down for the first time during this ordeal. I was stunned when I saw the phone. Following my boss's advice, I took a picture of the incriminating messages on my wife's phone alongside today's newspaper to timestamp the evidence. I'm 38, my wife is 32. We have a 1-year-old child. We've been married for 4 years. She just returned to work from maternity leave this April. Since her return, our marriage has been, well, without intimacy. Seems she's been finding satisfaction elsewhere. The timestamps on the pictures indicate this affair started right after she returned from maternity leave. It's like she's not even my wife anymore. I've finished discussing things with the detective agency. I'll put her phone back like nothing happened. They gave me some bugs and cameras to set up at home in case her lover comes over. I'll start tailing her after work and see where that leads. The man is already known, and the detective agency is truly professional. The detective also found other images in a different folder on her phone. They were sent almost every morning by this man. Why would she even lock and save something like this? I'm moving forward with a divorce. A lawyer recommended by the agency is helping me. With this much evidence, we're aiming for a quick resolution. I'll stay at a nearby hotel and prepare for what's next. Now, I even wonder if my child is really mine. We all have type A blood. The child looks like my wife. I always thought it was natural for him to resemble my wife since he's our son. I'll think more about this later. I've just arrived at the hotel. I'll meet with the lawyer around 5:30 p.m. to discuss further steps. Even though I'm not in the best state of mind, we need to decide on a course of action, especially since a confrontation might happen today. The detective just called me. My wife is heading to the daycare with the man. They're a bit apart but going in the same direction. She's walking with a swaying motion. Probably signaling directions. She has a habit of using her hips to point. Like when she asks to fetch something, she'd sway her hips. I used to find it cute, but now it just seems creepy. I've decided to get a DNA test for the child, regardless of what my wife says. My child always cries when I hold him, so I have no attachment in terms of custody. I've learned in parenting classes, so it's not a matter of how I hold him. If the DNA test shows he's mine, I wonder if I'll have to pay child support. I'd rather pay it all at once if I have to. And I plan to take a hefty sum from my wife and her lover for this mess. The meeting with the lawyer is over. We've decided to pursue alimony, especially if the DNA test proves the child isn't mine. The detective agency is keeping me updated. We've decided to go ahead with the surprise visit. My wife left the daycare, and oddly enough, dropped our child off at her parents' place, and now she's at our home having dinner with the guy. We know they won't be leaving the place soon, so we're planning to burst in as soon as we have solid proof. I can't help but feel a bit excited about all this. The place is in my name, and if they've been using it for their trysts, I'll sell it immediately. Also, I plan to have the lawyer handle various things, including selling the condo I bought for her parents, who I brought in from the countryside. I can't even think about living in such a place. According to the detective, the guy seemed quite familiar with unlocking our home. Seems like he's been over a few times. My lawyer and I are almost having too much fun with this, even joking about adding another $10,000 to the lawsuit. I'm weirdly upbeat right now. But I don't plan on getting violent, no matter what happens. I may be excited, but dealing with them would only dirty my hands. It feels more like the detectives and my lawyer are the ones getting carried away. They must think I'm a big client or something. The team storming my home includes 4 detectives and me. There's a chance my wife's family is in on it, so I checked if my parents could come. My dad isn't back yet, but my mom is furious and has decided to come, along with my sister. My young sister adores her big brother. She's pretty fired up about all this. With everyone so hyped up, I feel like I'm looking at everything from an outsider's perspective. My life has turned upside down in just one day. My boss is excited too. When I updated him, he said,
"I'll join the raid. More witnesses the better, ha."
It's becoming like a big event. They're apparently in the laundry room, getting all lovey-dovey, and we're about to converge on them. The detective agency is amazing. Their prediction that they're probably at your home was spot on. The plan is to surprise them right after their bath. Then we'll all take pictures as evidence. We've got evidence of the affair, so the plan is to proceed through the lawyer. This raid is just for securing proof, like an extra show. I'm going to enjoy this festival. Right now, they're fooling around in the expensive jacuzzi I splurged on when we bought the place. Makes me want to demand even more in damages. Technology can be so cruel. The detectives are live streaming everything to me. My sister just arrived at the meeting place and said,
"I've got firecrackers."
"Wait, why does she have those?" My boss is excitedly waiting, and my parents are in a state of confusion. Alright, it's time to raid. No matter what happens, I'm going full speed ahead with the divorce and alimony. The raid ended quickly. I opened the door while they were in the middle of it, and in their confusion, we all took pictures, my sister getting overly excited.
You probably have a lot to say, but from now on, please contact this lawyer.
I said, leaving the lawyer's business card behind. Now, oddly enough, we're having a celebration with the detective team. My boss, my sister, and even my dad, who decided to join in without really understanding what's going on. My sister is particularly high-spirited, laughing about the hidden cameras and mics we set up inside the home. Meanwhile, my wife and her lover are in the middle of a dramatic scene. I'm totally over it. Suddenly. The hardest part was probably the neighbors coming out, wondering what's going on, like they're picking up gossip. Well, I have no intention of going back now anyway. I'm planning to demand over 6 figures in damages from both my wife and her lover. With the home included, it might even exceed that for my wife. The detective agency is basically an acquaintance, so I'll let them do their thing. The aftermath for the remaining 2 was intense, and the guy left in a bad mood. He's saying things like I'll take this to court and win. But I'd welcome today's events being part of the public trial record. Left alone at home, my wife seems to be frantically searching for something. I can see through the video camera that she's desperately looking for something. If she's searching for the camera or bugs, she won't find them because they're hidden in unexpected places. If she tries to negotiate for a lower settlement, I'll immediately go to court. I'm in a position of power regarding her workplace. Whatever her lover says, I can just end.
All business dealings with his company would end the next day.
I don't know what leverage he thinks he has, but if he tries anything, I'm prepared for a mutual downfall. Everything related to real estate is in my name. After a burglary in the past, I keep all my assets in a bank safe deposit box. She must be pretty desperate. My wife's parents have been calling non-stop. I'm going to turn off my phone for today. Annoying. Then on Friday, I visited my wife's company with my lawyer. We requested a meeting with her lover, which was denied, so we arranged a meeting through the headquarters. When asked about the start of their affair, he couldn't give a straight answer. As expected, we left him alone and sent a certified letter to his home for delivery on Monday. My wife seems to have gone back to her parents, so I started the process of selling both that place and the one we currently live in. The lawyer will notify them to move out by next month as a courtesy.
If you interfere, it's obstructing business operations.
Should smooth the sale. I don't want to meet my wife directly, so I had the lawyer handle Friday's discussion. Turns out the child might not be mine. She became evasive when I brought up DNA testing, and couldn't talk much. It seems their affair started after our marriage and lasted for years.
You've become more attractive since getting married.
She mistook the words as a compliment, not harassment. Now realizing she can't contact me directly, my wife's parents apparently stormed my parents' place. My sister, who lives there, and her husband are handling it, but they're just saying.
Talk through the lawyer.
My mother is furious, saying.
I always knew that daughter-in-law was like that. Her family lacks common sense.
The guy is accusing us of defamation and obstruction of business for storming his company, but we explained everything through his HR department, and it was an official business meeting. We're pushing for double the alimony. Mediation is likely to fail, so we might go straight to court. When I told him,
if visiting your workplace is defamation, I'll visit your home.
He begged us to not do that. My wife just cries when she talks, screams when I propose something, and goes into a rage when I bring up the child. Meanwhile, her parents are in the background saying, Our daughter did nothing wrong. And
The child is yours.
making any discussion impossible, we'll talk when things settle down. My wife's parents have always belittled me. They never paid their taxes properly and started collecting Social Security as soon as they turned 60, receiving less than $1,000 a month combined. I ended up paying for most of their living expenses and they would always come to me for money. I never expected it to go this far. They seem to want me to reconsider. But I feel they should reflect on their past behavior first. The lawsuit might not yield much from the guy, so even if I win, I might have to compromise on the amount. This might end up being just a moral victory for me. That guy is currently looking for a lawyer. The first place he visited this morning was the law firm I hired. Despite having their business card, he went to the closest law firm to his company. He hesitated to enter, and when my lawyer arrived and spoke to him, he acted suspiciously, fell down the stairs, and threatened to sue. No problem, we have witnesses. The content certification arrived at the man's place. His wife came to the office with it in the afternoon. After being scolded by my lawyer for opening it without permission, she was sent on her way. Looks like another case just popped up at the office. It seems it will end quickly. The guy's wife is from a remarriage, and some of the kids are his from a previous relationship. I think she'll quickly put an end to him. It's funny, the oldest child is almost at the age where child support won't be needed anymore. My wife's parents showed up at my parents' place during the day, putting on a little act of coughing.
Can't you do something about a place to live at least?
But they were told.
It's not our property. Why don't you talk through the lawyer?
And sent away. After the door closed, they reportedly left quite energetically, spewing insults. My wife finally agreed to meet with the lawyer. She plans to resign from her job at the end of this month and hopes for a reconciliation. She refuses to sign for a DNA testing, and since she'll be unemployed, she wants her parents' place to not be sold at least until the end of this year. During a lunch break today, there will be another meeting. When asked by the lawyer about my thoughts, I said,
Reconciliation? Absolutely no way. If she won't agree to DNA testing, then double the alimony. Custody? I don't want it. Child support? What's that? Her parents' place has viewing requests for this weekend, so they better move out quickly.
I also made sure the lawyer warned them about additional charges for obstructing the viewing. Since yesterday, her lover has gone missing. He was last seen in front of the law firm and hasn't shown up for work or gone home. People are asking if I know his whereabouts, but what can I say? As for my wife, things are somewhat settled. In the end, she spitted out the truth about the child. So, no obligation of child support for me. It was either double the alimony or tell the truth, and she chose the cheaper option in the short term. Funny, the child turned out to be another man's, so ultimately, she'll pay double alimony and get no child support. Regarding the home, we've agreed to her moving out this week to a new place. It's amazing what you can find. A rundown basement with no private bathroom. It's a bit far and inconvenient, so hopefully, that'll reduce the number of times they come to my parents' home. Today, I'm off to file the divorce papers and complete the formalities to end the marriage. Then, I'll be moving to my new place. Can't settle in a hotel forever. The matter of the child requires a court case, which I've left entirely to the lawyer. All expenses on her. We'll probably end up doing a DNA test. My wife saved up quite a bit since she kept working after our marriage. The lawyer, on my behalf, has already started dividing the assets, but it looks like it'll all go to the confrontation with her lover's wife and the child custody case. Lawyers can be scary. Wouldn't want them as enemies. With no job, having to take care of her parents and child, and paying alimony, my wife's life is going to be quite amusing. Plus, the new place she's moving to has been scheduled for demolition next year, as per the landlord's plans. The real estate agent who brokered the deal is a buddy of mine from middle school, so he enthusiastically found the worst possible place. By next year, she'll probably be broke. Well, it's none of my business anymore. Arriving at my new home, I suddenly realized, wow, my life has really changed. Today was supposed to be a direct confrontation with her lover, but since my wife spilled everything, it was pretty much a surrender. His wife is providing key testimony like,
I suspected something was off with them even before their marriage.
So, I'm expecting another round of compensation from my ex-wife. From the moment I discovered the affair, everything spiraled, and with great support and encouragement from those around me, I feel like I've done everything I could without any regrets. It's incredibly underhanded and disrespectful to try and make me take care of another man's child for life. Well, considering the kind of parents she has, it's no surprise she grew up without common sense. I'm somewhat curious to see how the child will turn out. Hopefully, they can use their parents as a negative example and grow up to be decent.
Also, please sign this,
she said, bringing out a divorce paper. Her part was already signed. Laughing in a high-pitched voice, she taunted,
I'm divorcing a useless loser. I'll be demanding alimony.
Fine. I replied. You see, you have an inheritance coming from your father. I was surprised with my uncle's word. I never imagined my modest living father had such wealth. Really? How much is it? What I heard out of curiosity was a ridiculous amount. Well, it's about $20 million in assets. My name is Thomas Johnson, a 42-year-old average office worker. I married 5 years ago when I got promoted to a department head. The office romance led to a grand wedding, celebrated by my department and funded by my savings. Her radiant beauty and smile from that day are still etched in my heart. My beautiful wife, Jessica, had been the heroine of the department since she joined. A bit clumsy and not very skilled at her job, but her smile and hard-working nature attracted me. I never thought I could court such a popular woman, and just admired her from afar. However, working closely on a project, I started covering for her frequent blunders. Our relationship quickly grew. Eventually, I confessed, and she shyly nodded in agreement, leading us to dating. After a few years of dating, when I became a department head, I proposed.
Really? I'm so happy.
Though it cost 3 months of my salary and my bonus, I bought her a large Alexandrite engagement ring, which she was impressed with and promised to wear always. I was completely smitten and vowed to not let her struggle after marriage. She always wanted to retire after marriage.
Then we must buy a beautiful home,
she said with a beaming smile. That alone made me feel content. We searched for properties and finally bought a luxurious condo, also traveling abroad for our honeymoon. My savings have almost run out, but if I work seriously, my salary is enough for us to live on. We plan to save again for future children. A calm and peaceful home. It has been my dream for many years that when I return home, my wife will be waiting for me, and that someday my children will join us, and that we can live happily together as a family. Perhaps influenced by losing my parents as a child. However, at the time, I was completely ecstatic. With a beautiful wife and a home, I was thinking about the future that lies ahead. So I never imagined something like this would happen. A happy family life. However, this dream shattered within a few years of marriage. Jessica was a glamorous woman. She looked good in all her flashy attire, and it was fun to walk next to her like that. However, she was like that until her boyfriend and newlywed days. Initially, she appreciated even the smallest gifts with a bright smile and thanks, but 5 years into our marriage, she has completely changed. During newlywed days, whenever I got home, she smiled at me and said welcome home. Nowadays, when I come home, the door is locked, and inside, the room is silent and dark. Sighing, I turn on the lights to reveal a messy living room, which only frustrates me more. Resignedly, I tidy up a bit and change from my suit into room wear, then head to the kitchen. The unused kitchen is clean, and obviously, there's no dinner prepared. Opening the fridge, I find it stuffed with beer but hardly any food. Reluctantly, I took out instant noodles that I had stocked up on and turned on the kettle. I don't drink alcohol, so the beer in the fridge is Jessica's. She used to try cooking, and I found her efforts endearing. However, by the time I realized it, she started to dislike cooking and suggested eating out at night. I work too and don't have time to cook, and since she struggled with it, I thought it was fair to give up on homemade meals. However, Jessica disliked dining at family restaurants or diners and always insisted on going to expensive places. When I said we couldn't afford high-end restaurants every night, she would frown with disbelief and ask,
What? You can't even afford that?
if she's not good at cooking, I'm fine with the prepared foods from the supermarket. Or, if it were a family restaurant, I could have dined there every night. But she always demanded fancy places, like fine dining restaurants meant for special occasions, which I honestly couldn't afford to visit daily. If things go like this, will I be said that it's not worth it? I thought I had enough for a slightly luxurious life. But her demands and extravagance kept increasing after marriage. She's probably out having fun again tonight. I was tired of thinking about it, so I went straight to the bedroom and fell asleep, feeling disappointed as she didn't seem to come back even after midnight. She came back in the morning, just before I went to work. Before I knew it, it was no longer unusual for Jessica to come home in the morning. When she does come home, she's dressed up fancily. Coming back home right before I leave, brushes me aside without a glance, saying,
Move, you're in the way.
And pushed me away viciously and entered the room. Unable to say anything, I just sigh and left the room. I'm off then. No response comes to my muttered words. Amidst these days, one day I receive an unfamiliar bill. Surprised, I opened it to check. It's a several $1,000 charge from a credit card I don't remember applying for. Jessica must have gotten it under my name without my knowledge. Angrily, I call the credit card company, explaining its unauthorized use, but being spouses, they couldn't lower the charge and only stopped the card's use. The bill showed significant payments to the same place. Fearfully, I hire a lawyer and detective agency to investigate her. Then it turned out that she spent every night at a nightclub, lavishing her favorite DJ with gifts. I was astonished with the fact she was lavishing her favorite DJ with my hard-earned money. Shocked by this, I take a leave of absence to confront her. I guess I have to accept the reality that I've been ignoring for so long. When she wakes up past noon and sees me, she frowns.
Why are you here?
It's normal for me to be in my own place, I replied. She laughs condescendingly.
Oh, I changed the ownership. This is my place now. Didn't I tell you?
Gone was the beauty of our early marriage days. All that stood there was a venomous woman, laughing hysterically. I need to talk to you seriously. Will you sit down?
Now? Well, I'll listen.
She says reluctantly, sitting down. You've made some credit cards under my name. How much did you spend?
I don't remember. I threw them away when they stopped working.
She replies, as if discarding trash. Visiting the nightclub is.
Huh? You finally noticed? I've been going since I worked at the company.
Huh? What do you mean? As I demanded an explanation, Jessica looked like she found it amusing.
You see, John, he's a DJ. I started dating you because I was mad at him for becoming a DJ without telling me.
I was speechless at her words.
You're more boring than I thought, but you were good with money, so I thought it was okay.
Jessica spoke casually, then began dreamily talking about another man.
But then, John came back to me. He's aiming to be the top DJ and his salary is incredible.
Watching her continue talking about a man I didn't know, I wondered how I was supposed to look at her.
So, I decided to help John become the top DJ. That requires money, right? So, I had no choice.
Did you sell this place too?
Of course not. I'm planning to live here with John soon.
What is she talking about? Confused and lost, she looked at me with disdain and said,
So, you should leave now, okay?
What are you saying?
I've changed the ownership and I want to live with John soon. You're in the way. You're off today, right? Pack your stuff and leave.
After saying that, she returned to the bedroom, leaving me in a daze. I couldn't think straight and impulsively packed my things and left the room. It was pouring rain, but I didn't even notice. Wandering aimlessly, drinking alcohol I usually can't handle, and the next thing I knew, I was staring at a white ceiling. A nurse rushed over to check my pulse. Where am I?
Don't you remember? You were found in the rain with acute alcohol poisoning.
I'm terribly sorry. Apparently, I had drunk myself into oblivion and collapsed on the street, developing pneumonia from the rain.
You've been asleep for 3 days.
3 days?
Yes, your coworkers visited a few times.
It seemed I had been asleep for a long time. Probably due to the mental stress also.
Oh, it looks like you have a visitor.
Seeing a shadow peeking through the door, the nurse said.
Okay, then.
And left her seat. As the nurse left, Jessica and a strange man entered. He had a well-groomed face, blonde hair, and a flashy suit, probably the DJ Jessica mentioned.
Oh, you're alive. I thought I might get the insurance money.
Hearing this, I was horrified. How much insurance had she put on me?
Oh, and I threw away all the stuff you left in the room.
I see. My room was simple and I didn't have many personal belongings. What I had taken with me was enough.
Also, sign this.
She handed me a divorce paper. Already signed on her part. Laughing in a high-pitched voice, she said.
I'm divorcing a useless loser. I'll be demanding alimony.
Fine. I had no energy to argue and signed the divorce paper, then handed it back to her. She happily left with her lover, holding the divorce paper. At that point, I felt like giving up. Overwhelmed, I lay down on the bed and fell asleep. During the next few days, 2 unexpected visitors came to see me. One was a police officer, asking if I remembered being pushed or anything about the accident, but I couldn't recall anything. The officer looked skeptical, but what could it have been? The second visitor was a well-dressed middle-aged man. I didn't know who he was, but he seemed very interested in my past. However, I didn't have much of a past to tell. I lost my parents in an accident when I was young. It seemed they had no relatives, so I grew up in an orphanage. The orphanage was a rough place, and I don't have many good memories from there. After graduating high school, I took a gap year to save money and then went to college. As I shared these details, the man teared up.
Who are you?
I asked.
Oh, I'm sorry for not introducing myself earlier. I'm Ryan Johnson, your father's brother, your uncle.
Huh. I had never heard about my parents' relatives. Maybe I was too young to remember, but no one came for me, so I assumed I had no relatives. Your parents eloped and got married. At that time, my father, your grandfather, was very angry. He explained how they were disowned and removed from the family registry. However, as time passed and my grandfather's anger subsided, he received a letter and photo of his grandson, me. He tried to reconcile and searched for my parents. But by then, they had passed away. Shocked by the news, my grandfather fell ill. Since then my grandfather searched for information on how my parents lived and where his grandson had gone, using information centers and other sources. But my parents were already memorialized as unknowns, and my whereabouts in the orphanage system were unclear.
You recently used a detective agency, right? It's under our control. We investigated, suspecting it was you from your name. So, you really are my uncle?
Yes, I am.
I know you've been through a lot. We'll be here to support you now.
His kind words made me tear up. I had been alone for so long, it was overwhelming to finally feel this sense of security. It was my first experience being told that I could feel safe like this. I then shared everything with my uncle. My marriage with Jessica, her betrayal, and how I ended up in debt. My uncle comforted me, saying I had done well. His warm touch made me break down crying. Then, my uncle pats me on the head and tells me that I did my best. For some reason, that hand felt so warm that I started crying.
We'll handle your divorce. She picked a bad time, though. What do you mean?
I asked.
You see, there's an inheritance meant for your father that you'll receive. Let's start the inheritance procedures.
I was astonished. I never imagined my modestly living father had such wealth.
Really? How much is it?
I asked out of curiosity. The amount he mentioned was staggering.
Well, the assets are about $20 million.
A week later, I returned to work. My colleagues congratulated me on my recovery, showing concern. Then, when I announced my divorce at the same time as I was discharged from the hospital, my colleagues looked at me with indescribable expressions on their faces. There was an indescribable look of pity on her face, and I wondered if they knew her true nature. No, to be precise, it seems that rumors about her started after we got married. Everyone was considerate and didn't let me hear them, but at that time, Jessica was apparently flirting with other male colleagues too. In fact, after our marriage, many realized they had been betrayed, and it was speculated that she chose me because I gave her the best engagement ring. But seeing me happy and seemingly successful in my marriage, they thought it might just be rumors. However, the female colleagues were quite critical, saying they always knew she was after money. They knew about her extravagant spending and her complaints about her boyfriend becoming a DJ. At that time, I was too caught up in the moment and close to getting married, so no one said anything. But now, there seems to be a sense of guilt for not having said anything.
It's not anyone else's fault because it was due to my thoughtlessness. In the end, I was able to meet relatives I thought I didn't have.
I said with a smile, lightening the atmosphere in the office and feeling happy to be back at work. After being kicked out of the condo, I'm now living in a condo owned by the Johnson family. It's a very nice condo, and although I offered to pay rent, I was told it was originally an asset meant for your father. Live there without worry. But surely this luxurious condo isn't part of my $20 million inheritance. I was told that the estimated cost was $20 million, and in a situation that seemed unrealistic, I was just trying to return to peace. In the midst of these surreal events, my cell phone suddenly rang loudly. It was Jessica. What could she possibly want now?
Hiding assets from your wife. How low can you be? And why should I have to pay alimony?
A deafening voice came from the phone. Confused, I replied.
What are you talking about?
The divorce. You should have just paid the alimony quietly. Why are you taking me to court?
I had completely forgotten about the civil suit, being preoccupied with my hospitalization and reuniting with relatives. However, I thought that she filed for divorce and that was the end of it.
And you said you had no relatives. What is this about being the grandson of the chairman of the Johnson conglomerate? I didn't know. The divorce is invalid.
She was ranting and raving, and I couldn't make sense of it all, so I quietly hung up and blocked her number. After consulting with my uncle, we decided to meet with Jessica over the weekend. The reserved restaurant had a private room, and when I arrived, Jessica and her lover were already seated, glaring at me.
Don't worry, I've already taken care of everything.
My uncle said, patting my shoulder as we sat down to talk. However, we are already divorced, so what else are we going to discuss?
So, as you wished, we're divorced and I've left the condo. What more do you want?
I asked.
Everything. Why did you live so modestly being part of the Johnson family? You were hiding money from me.
She accused.
What are you talking about? I reunited with my uncle after our divorce.
But she didn't seem to listen and went on.
And why aren't you paying me alimony? Now in the civil suit, I have to pay you? What's that about?
Glancing at my uncle, I saw him smiling subtly. It seemed our family had been handling things.
And about the credit cards. Why should I pay when they were made in your name?
She continued.
You made them without my consent and used them yourself, I responded.
But they're in your name, you should pay.
My uncle spoke in a calm tone.
As for the credit cards, they weren't made by Thomas. They were made illegally by you, right?
What? It's shared property in a marriage.
She protested.
Then you also have a responsibility to pay.
My uncle replied with a smile, and her lover, with a smug grin, interjected.
Come on, you're rich, just pay up and let's end this. Why go through all this trouble of a lawsuit?
He is a man with a lewd grin. His words were outrageous for someone who was just a lover.
So, let's just pay the money and get it over with without going to court or anything like that. It's troublesome for you, too, right?
My head was starting to ache from this one-sided conversation. But my uncle's next words changed the man's demeanor.
If that's how it is, let's proceed with a criminal lawsuit for credit card fraud and marriage fraud. What? This guy's just a fool, and Jessica got tired of him, that's all. Even so, under American law, there's no obligation to pay alimony to a cheating partner.
My uncle continued in a lower voice.
Well, I'm willing to pay the necessary amount regarding the divorce. But insurance fraud, that's something I cannot overlook.
What? What do you mean?
Thomas,
Did you know that the life insurance policy taken out on you exceeded $20 million? Of course, I had no idea. When I involuntarily looked at Jessica, she averted her eyes as if trying to escape my gaze. Then, we'll withdraw from the civil suit. We'll pay an appropriate amount. My uncle said this as he stood up, gesturing for me to follow. As we were leaving, he left a chilling message for them. It seems your past is quite suspicious. We will be filing a criminal lawsuit, so be prepared. He took me out of the restaurant. What followed happened quickly. My uncle had prepared everything, and I only had to file the lawsuit as the plaintiff. It was surprisingly straightforward. Jessica and her lover, Davis, were accused of various charges, including attempted insurance fraud. The fact that the insurance was unknown to me made it all the more terrifying. On the day I was kicked out in the rain, Davis had been following me. Though I don't remember, it seems he pushed me down some back alley stairs and left after confirming I was unconscious. I was told by the doctors that if I had been found any later, I might not have survived. The early call to the ambulance was thanks to a detective from the Johnson family, who had been tracking me since I started my investigation. The evidence I gathered included Jessica's clear infidelity in Davis's conduct, and the Johnson family's investigation revealed her collaboration with a judicial scrivener to steal the rightful owner of condo and plan for insurance fraud. There was plenty of evidence, so it was likely they would face actual prison sentence. Thus, my years of romance and marriage ended in disaster. In a large American-style house with an impressive gate, I met my grandfather, William Johnson, in one of the rooms. He was well known as an investor, and it was unbelievable that he was my grandfather. But when he saw me, he smiled warmly and nostalgically. "I'm sorry to greet you like this. Come closer, let me have a good look at you," he said, so I sat down beside his bed. I owe your parents an apology. If I had allowed their marriage, they might not have passed away so soon." His voice, filled with regret and sadness, made me realize how much he had loved my father. "Yes, but my parents seemed happy, and I'm really happy to meet you, Grandpa. Is that so?" Grandpa nodded several times, holding back tears, and firmly grasped my hand. "I made it in time this time. Thank you for being alive." Hearing these words and realizing he had been mourning my parents all this time, tears spilled from my eyes. "Yes. I'm grateful to my parents for giving me life, and to you, Grandpa, and Uncle." As I spoke, Grandpa and my uncle, who stood by the bed, looked at me. "Thank you for finding me. I had thought I was alone in the world and rushed into marriage seeking a family. That was a failure, but now I have found my true family. There couldn't be a greater happiness. Now, I'm living happily with my family." I visited the airport for the first trip with my wife, Carol. However, we found ourselves surrounded by a group of 5 guys.
"Your wife is hot. Old men get away."
They deliberately crossed their arms and showed their fists, trying to separate her and me. But in the next moment, she suddenly burst into laughter.
Do you think you can do anything to this man? It's a joke. Can you call your boss?
"What?"
Later, when the boss appeared and saw her face, he started trembling uncontrollably as if all the blood drained from his body. "My name is Brian Williams. It seems that I'm 33 years old this year. I am a large stature with well-developed muscles. I have what you might call a lean muscular physique. The reason my body is well-trained is likely due to my past job as a bodyguard. They say I used to work protecting politicians and celebrities domestically and internationally. However, during a mission accompanying a client to a rural area, I suffered a severe injury while protecting the client. Since then, everything, including my age and career, has become speculative, as I lost my memory in everything beyond my right wrist during that assignment. My earliest memory is of the view from a hospital bed. A stark white ceiling and white bandages wrapped around me. In that helpless situation, Carol, my girlfriend, was my only solace. Even though I couldn't remember her face, she kindly forgave me. And during my hospitalization, her brightness and sincerity were a great comfort to me.
Even without memories, just your being alive is enough. Let's create many memories together from now on.
Upon my discharge, I married her. Even though I quit the bodyguard job and received insurance and retirement funds, combined with her income as a nurse, wandering around without a purpose didn't suit me, so I searched for work. It was challenging to find a job that would hire someone with no dominant hand and no memory, but eventually, I landed a position as an administrative staff at a delivery service. My enjoyment during work is exploring various nearby restaurants for lunch. On that day, I was savoring a meal at the counter of a Chinese restaurant I recently liked.
May I have to sit here?
He is probably 10 years younger than me. A man with a soft smile pointed to the seat next to mine. I noticed the lunchtime crowd and shared seating was inevitable. Sure, go ahead. After promptly placing his order, the man struck up a friendly conversation with me as I ate.
This place is fantastic, isn't it? You come here often, right? I do too.
Oh, yeah. As I gave a vague response, he showed a soft smile.
Sorry for approaching you suddenly. I'm Mark Smith. I couldn't help but notice you seem exhausted.
My face?
Yes, you look exhausted. Would you like to come to my massage parlor?
Perhaps this man is a masseur. Seeing a laborer like me, he might be trying to pitch his business. As I hesitated to respond immediately, he forcefully handed me his business card, gripping my left hand. Trying to pull away, his grip was unexpectedly strong.
There's the address and map on the back. Feel free to drop by. It'll make your body and mind feel better. Come visit me.
Receiving a business card is harmless, and I could always discard it. As if he could read my thoughts, he flashed a smile at me.
I'll be coming here again tomorrow, so let me guide you around.
Yeah, okay. In a hurry, I finished the remaining dishes, and stood up to settle the bill.
Let's meet again, Brian.
I nodded lightly and left the restaurant. However, on the way back to the office, I suddenly realized, did I tell him my name? That night, when I told Carol about him, she advised me to discard the business card.
He seems like a weird person, so it's better not to get involved, right? Maybe try having lunch at a different place.
Certainly, she had a point. Guided to an unfamiliar place without knowing anything about the person, I must have seemed like someone without a sense of danger. But it'll be awkward if we meet again. I'm not good at lying. It's hard to say I haven't been drinking.
Just don't meet him. He doesn't know our home address anyway.
Her words made me tilt my head. Come to think of it, I feel like he knew my name.
What's that? Scary. Could he be stalking you?
No one stalks a guy in his 30s. I unintentionally laughed, but she earnestly tried to convince me.
I have a bad feeling about that. Strangely, you come to the shop every day. If you happen to meet him again, be sure to call the police.
She seemed to have a sharp intuition, and her premonitions often turned out to be right. From the next day, following her advice, I went to an entirely different area than usual. I found excitement in entering new restaurants, realizing that I enjoyed visiting unfamiliar places. While waiting at a pedestrian crossing, contemplating exploring more places on my way back to the office, it happened. Oops. Suddenly pushed from behind, I jumped into the roadway. Desperately retreating, a large dump truck grazed the tips of my toes. Afterward, even when the signal turned green, I remained seated in the same spot. My chest pounded loudly, and my legs trembled uncontrollably. It seemed like someone was trying to take my life. I thought it was ridiculous, but my suspicions turned into certainty quickly. After that, I faced body checks at the train station platform, nearly pushed down the stairs. And the most unforgivable was a car crashing into my home. Fortunately, both Carol and I were absent at that time, but the van had smashed into the entrance of our home. It was a stolen car, and the driver remained unidentified. Terrified that her life was also at risk, I finally decided to consult the police. While increasing patrols prevented further suspicious incidents, she remained vigilant.
Let's go on a trip, get away from this house. It'll be a good change of pace for you, right?
A trip sounds good. But I have work. As I was about to say that, I finally realized. Her concerns were directed even towards my job. I met the man near my workplace for the first time, so it wasn't completely off the mark. I'll quit this job and look for something in a different place.
Then, before starting the new job, let's refresh ourselves. I'm going to take a slightly longer break.
Her chosen destination for the trip was the Philippines. We had planned to go to the Philippines for our honeymoon, but due to my unstable condition right after discharge, we had to give up on it. Sounds great, let's go to the Philippines. It's a bit delayed, but it can be our belated honeymoon. Her face lights up and she looks happy as she quickly prepares her travel clothes and guidebooks. Her excitement naturally made me look forward to it, too. And then, the day of the trip arrived. We were waiting for the boarding time in the airport lobby. Is the stay duration 2 weeks?
We rented a house, so let's take it easy.
Although it shouldn't be the first time on an airplane, for me, who lost my memory, it's essentially the first flight. Concerned about me, who was nervously anticipating, she stood up gracefully.
I'll get some drinks for you. Stay here.
Thanks to her being there, I can live like this, even without my right hand and memories. Expressing my gratitude to her once again, I watched her smile back. Out of the corner of my eyes, I see her walking toward me, smiling, having gotten drinks. However, at that moment, unfamiliar men suddenly surrounded her. Reacting quickly, I rushed to her, shielding her small body with my back. There were 5 guys in total. They were also surrounding us from behind. The guy with sunglasses, probably the leader standing in the center, seemed to be the most skilled in combat. But it's okay, I can subdue them in an instant. After calmly analyzing the situation and making a judgment, I twisted my head at the confidence welling up within me. Why am I able to make judgments with such confidence? The men, without showing any disturbance at my appearance, approached with a smirk instead. The sunglasses guy in the middle sneered at me.
Well, your wife is hot. Old man, disappear.
Nope. At that moment, I recognized the guy standing in front of me. With sunglasses and a flashy open-collared shirt, he looked like a thug, and this guy was definitely. You are the guy I met at the Chinese restaurant. Mark or something.
I don't like perceptive old men. Mark. I think I used that name.
He laughed loudly, then suddenly glared sharply at me.
Just disappear. Your opponent is going to be my buddy here.
The one referred to as a buddy is probably his subordinate. The guys, deliberately crossing their arms and showing their fists, tried to separate me and her. But in the next moment, she burst into laughter suddenly.
Do you guys think you can do something to him? It's pointless. Can you call your boss?
What?
He stared at her in amazement, but perhaps feeling ridiculed, he quickly became furious.
You think you can get cocky if we go easy on you? Hey, you guys, change of plans. Crush the old man in front of this cheeky girl.
Upon hearing his order, the first to move was not his buddy but me. Anticipating the 4 men who were preparing to fight, I pushed the shoulder of the guy on the left, disrupting his balance. While the surprised man fell, involving his comrades, the guy at the opposite end swung his arm toward me. However, I calmly avoided the fist and stepped back, confirming that the man, who had lost his target, swayed and collapsed to the floor, waving his arms. My awareness was sharpened to the extreme, and the movements of those around me felt like slow motion. How would the opponent move next? And how should I move? As if in a movie scene, I subdued the 4 men without lowering my hand.
You're the only one left. This plan, it's your arbitrary decision, right?
No way. He should have lost his memory.
He just looked around at his fallen comrades, seemingly useless. Seeing the clumsy him, she sighed deeply.
You're such a small fry. Hurry up and call the boss, will you?
But
hurry up.
Slapped by her dignified voice, Mark jumped and started operating his phone. After a while, a large man appeared. Probably from our parents' generation. He had the presence and composure fitting for someone called the boss.
You've become quite important to call me out.
It's an emergency, boss. Something happened to Carol.
Carol.
Why did they know her name? I wondered, but any small doubt disappeared in the boss's astonished expression that followed. The boss, upon seeing her face, turned pale and started trembling. He then berated Mark with tremendous force.
What have you done to her?
I did it for her.
Shut up. Miss, my subordinate has caused you great disrespect.
The man referred to as the boss began showing his respect to her.
It seems the quality has greatly deteriorated. To have such a man as your subordinate.
I have no words to return. At least, please handle this guy as you see fit, miss.
It seemed she knew the boss. Still bewildered by everything happening, she frowned.
I'm sorry. Let's cancel the trip. Shall we go home and talk a bit?
I agreed to the cancellation as well. Going to the Philippines now would be no fun with him and his gang around. When we returned home, surprisingly, she brought Mark along. I found it strange to invite the guy who attacked us into our house, but I decided to listen to her explanation first.
Now, where should we start?
She prepared coffee for us and took a sip herself.
Why did my body move on its own? And why did you, who handed me a business card from a massage parlor, send thugs to attack us? Explain it so that I can understand.
Mark seemed to have prepared himself during the journey. He returned to his initial soft but forceful demeanor when we first met, shrugged his shoulders.
Let's start with your story, shall we? You were my superior.
Superior? Was this when I worked as a bodyguard? When I asked, he looked at me with pity.
She told me you used to work as a bodyguard. Is that true?
Well, yes.
First of all, you weren't a bodyguard. You and I were both members of a former Special Forces unit. As your superior, you were a very strict and serious person.
I felt my head spinning at this unexpected confession.
Hold on, so did she lie to me?
She didn't deny my question. That meant his story was true.
Our unit was tasked with highly specialized missions. Infiltrating countries with no diplomatic ties. Participating in suppressing civil wars, the kind of work that never makes it to this country's news. And the final order we received was to protect a VIP in a certain country.
He, back to his casual tone, grinned at Carol and said,
So the term bodyguard isn't a complete lie.
And with that, he gulped down the now lukewarm coffee.
As a result, trouble ensued in that place. But thanks to your efforts, the situation was resolved safely.
Oh, thanks. He is grinning, but I can tell he's not trying to compliment me. And what he said next shocked me so much that my eyes went blank.
You single-handedly annihilated the guerrillas surrounding our building, all while protecting the VIP. Despite being my superior, you were like no human I'd ever seen. Every person there, including women and child soldiers, was taken down. Later, we confirmed that you had taken the lives of 108 people.
108 people. The overwhelming number of casualties left me visibly shaken. I listened to the unexpected revelations about the past and observed her expression. However, she remained silent, still looking down, showing no signs of denying his words.
But even you, as remarkable as you are, couldn't escape unscathed. When you were found, it was a terrible sight. Your right wrist and beyond had disappeared, and you suffered from bruises and impacts all over your body. You were gasping for breath. Honestly, everyone present at that moment thought it was hopeless, that you wouldn't make it, except for her here.
What? I looked at her in surprise, wondering why she was involved in my past. My face must have reflected my doubts. He, enjoying my surprise, grinned and continued the story.
The VIP you protected was her father. He naively trusted the enemy's words and went out to a dangerous negotiation. In other words, thanks to her father, you lost both your right hand and memories.
No way. The past he was describing was entirely unfamiliar to me. I just stared silently at the end of my right wrist.
But unfortunately, her father met a tragic end on his way back home. Some speculated that you didn't take your guard duties seriously. However, Carol didn't believe that. She heard about your efforts to save her.
She tried to save me. Afterward, I was sent back to the country under strict security. However, after witnessing the dark side of various countries for years as a member of the Special Forces, it wasn't easy to transition back to civilian life.
Losing your memory might have been lucky in the end. Instead of letting you live as an ordinary person, she acted as your protector.
No. She was my fiancée.
Fiancée?
He burst into laughter, as if he had heard an amusing joke.
Who did you hear that from? Carol, right. She wouldn't tell the truth to someone she's deceiving. The woman who claimed to be your fiancée was keeping an eye on you.
Is that true? I wanted to at least see her face, so I directed my gaze towards her. However, she remained unmoved, looking down as if enduring something.
But it's too much for you, who risked your life to follow orders. How much was the retirement pay for a so-called bodyguard? Ideally, you should have received a huge reward. Yet here you are, working a meager part-time job. It's a betrayal to our special forces.
He, either excited or frustrated, slammed the table with his palm. The coffee cup, now empty, made a small rattling sound.
So I came back for you. I hoped it would be a clue for you to regain your memory. I want you to return to the person I admired, the strict superior. Wouldn't you want to regain your past memories?
Then what about the commotion at the airport? Why did you target me? Suddenly becoming humble, he directed a smile at me.
I apologize for earlier. She didn't want to let go of the toy she had finally obtained. You. So, I tried to forcefully separate you and her using drastic means.
My memories. Should I really regain my memories? Seeing my inner turmoil, he deepened his smile.
Now, let's reclaim your memories and return to the unit together.
Oh. What I know seems different.
At that moment, she interjected with a calm expression.
You just wanted to cover up your own failures, right?
Hey, what are you talking about? That can't be true.
He shook his head in denial, but his demeanor was blatantly strange. Ignoring the flustered him, she smiled at me.
In general, what he said is true. But there's one big difference.
The truth was, it seemed that he had initiated the situation by selling our information to the enemy. When I discovered the scene, he desperately explained. He pretended to sell information to the enemy but was actually spying on their side. He said that he had set up negotiations with the guerrillas as proof that he had not turned to the enemy, and that he took some important people with him to talk with the guerrilla leaders along with me. But in reality, he had become the enemy's inside man, leaving me and her father alone in the midst of the enemy. I was left behind to deal with 108 people by myself, and later they found me without my right hand and memory, and they saved my life. After finishing the whole story, she finally turned her gaze back to him.
Do you have any excuses?
What's the big deal? What's wrong with my actions?
He seemed cornered, but unexpectedly, he became defiant instead.
Everyone values their own life. You would do the same. I've only worked hard to gain status, honor, and wealth.
So, you admit to my story.
While he yelled with an excited, red face, she contrastingly sat quietly on the couch. He, triumphantly pointing at her, declared without remorse.
Yeah, that's right. I did it all. But so what? The demon commander who lost his memory and the woman completely disarmed by such a man. No matter how much they spout nonsense, no one would believe them.
That might be true.
Finally admitting your helplessness.
At that triumphant moment, he looked puzzled, searching his jacket pocket. What he pulled out was a vibrating cell phone indicating an incoming call.
A message from the boss. What the hell? Why am I a subject of disciplinary action?
You explained it yourself. Good job.
While he panicked and flustered, in contrast, Carol calmly sipped her coffee.
Nonsense. No way, you.
If it was such a brilliant plan, I thought I should let the boss know. Your passion for the special forces must have impressed the boss as well.
You, wicked woman.
She smiles at him, who exclaims with wide eyes, and holds up her own cell phone to show him. The screen was in call status, and the name of the caller, boss, was displayed in large letters. In other words, his boss knew all about his plan to use me to fool the special forces.
I've had the boss in on the whole story right from the start. Your passion for special forces must have been very inspiring to him.
You, bitch.
He immediately tried to escape, but before he had time to do so, several men entered through the front door. Their ability to sneak up on you without making a single sound of footsteps, as if their large physique were a lie, is incomparable to the thugs we saw earlier at the airport. When he finally recognized the face of the boss, he nodded as if in contemplation.
Have your excuses ready. I'll deny everything.
Yes, sir.
He lost all his vigor, surrounded by the men, and was taken away. Carol, confirming that him and the others were out of sight, let out a relieved sigh.
It's finally over.
After that, she, who became remarkably calm, began to explain what happened after the incident. If his betrayal had been exposed, he should have been dealt with, but he immediately escaped. Unable to speak due to injuries, I, who knew the truth, and her father, the other witness, passed away before conveying his betrayal. But she, who had heard her father's last words alone, volunteered to be my guardian to pursue him.
His invitation to the massage parlor was probably an attempt to capture you somehow. Now, being the sole witness, he wanted to eliminate you, erase all evidence, and return to the special forces with lies.
So did you suspect him from the beginning? To my question, she nodded quietly.
I lured him using you as bait. Then, making it seem like we were escaping overseas this time, we caught the panicked him.
Why did you call the boss?
He was the squad leader back then. Knowing that I was pursuing the real culprit of the incident, he entrusted the handling of him to me.
After explaining that much, she expressed her apology.
I'm sorry for lying. Saying that I was your fiancé was a lie, just as he said. Even though it was to capture him, I did something terrible to you.
Shaken by a series of revelations I had just learned, I just stared at her.
At first, I was with you only for the mission. But now, I genuinely love you. It might be hard to believe, but these past few years have been the happiest in my life.
After saying that with her face still let tears drop onto the table, she secretly shed tears without showing me her face. Thinking back, ever since I regained consciousness, her smile has always been next to me. In the face of her, a sight I had never seen before, I took a deep breath. I won't blame you.
Brian.
She looked stunned, lifting her tear-streaked face. Living with you helped me regain the ability to trust others. I'm not resentful, but grateful for the fact that you protected me.
But, is it okay? I deceived you, right?
I wrapped my arms around her, using my right wrist to gently pat her slender back to comfort her. In the future, we might face danger again, but this time, I'll protect you from it.
So, you'll continue to be my bodyguard.
She faintly smiled and gently hugged me in return. After that, Mark's whereabouts remained unknown. When I asked her once, she just laughed and said,
It's fine. He'll never show up near us again.
I have no idea what happened to him afterward, but he probably didn't lead a decent life. Later, she reported to the boss about me still having amnesia. I don't know the details of the report within the unit, but so far, there haven't been any reprimands from the boss. Carol and I now live peacefully, leaving behind the past of the Special Forces. We finally went on the Philippines trip that got cancelled before. As a couple, we thoroughly enjoyed the belated honeymoon.
Let's keep traveling together from now on.
Illuminated by the sunset over the tropical sea, she happily smiled. This is a secret from her, but I am gradually recovering my memories. With the skills acquired throughout my life, I felt like I could do anything to protect this smile.